cameras in it.
The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
All right, I was saying I've got these owls in my yard. I've had them for like 6 months, and I wanted to know what they're talking about. Jim, you got an idea?
They're pair bonding, or they're building a nest, and they are talking about just creating that bond that will create romance and eggs, and then taking care of the babies. And so It's a very tight bond. And I know that because we have a barred owl box in our backyard that we stream to the internet. And you can go to our website, and it'll be about a month or so before we start streaming. But right now, the mama's coming into the box, checking it out, nestling in, and then she's inside the box hooting to her mate outside the box and saying, "Yeah, I think this is pretty good. I think this will do. And you ought to come check it out too." And then I have an outside cam, and I can see him outside in a branch, maybe kind of touching beaks and stuff. So they're talking to each other, and is there going to be food when we have babies? Is this a good place to hunt? And is it safe? All those things. That's what they're all chatting about in just owl speak. You hear the hoots, but there's an awful lot of little noises that they make to each other too that you never hear, but we can hear them because of the cam.
Oh, I may have to figure something out, a rig like that, because there's a lot of conversations going on. Welcome everyone to the show. Welcome to this conversation. And I'm Stephen Zakash, joined with my co-host, Mike Lusky. And today we're discussing something that many companies strive for, but few truly master, and that's overseeing a culture that delivers joy. So company culture is more than a buzzword. It's kind of the heartbeat of a business, and it influences customer experience, employee engagement, your long-term success. So we are diving into the topic of delivering joy with our guest today. I'm excited about this one. Mike, why don't you introduce our guests and tell us a little bit more about today's conversation beyond our owl discussion?
Absolutely. I'm excited too, Stephen. Thanks. You're absolutely right. Joy isn't just a feel-good concept. It is truly a business advantage. I think the studies have proven that. And today with us, we have a guest who's built an entire business on delivering joy. Our guest is none other than Jim Carpenter. He's the founder and CEO of Wild Birds Unlimited, the leading backyard bird feeding and nature specialty retail franchise. Jim's passion for birds and nature led him to create a brand that isn't just about selling products, through a retail business. It's really about delivering joy to customers and fostering deep connection with the natural world around us. So under Jim's leadership, Wild Birds Unlimited has grown to a successful franchise with 350 plus locations across North America. And this proves, the concept that businesses built on passion, purpose, and joy can truly thrive. So Jim, welcome to the show. We're super excited to have you today with us.
So happy to be here. Thank you guys so much.
Maybe to help us get started, Jim, can you share a little bit in terms of the story behind Wild Birds Unlimited and how, perhaps your personal love for nature eventually evolved into bring, this business and deliver so much joy?
I can't. So it's kind of fun because 2.5 weeks ago was the kind of the anniversary of when I opened my little store in Indianapolis and made my first sale. So basically 44.5 years ago, I was unemployed and I was trying to figure out what to do, but I was a bird watcher and I'd run a little garden center where we sold birds feeding supplies, but it was never kind of the right stuff. And so when I left that company and really couldn't find a job or couldn't find one that anybody'd hire me for, I decided I'm going to do a mail order business. And then I quickly found a little spot in town here in Indianapolis that was cheap rent. I had enough money to pay 1 year's rent. And that was about all I had, plus get a little merchandise in. And I just thought, well, let's go for it. I'm going to sell bird feeders retail And it's really then my passion as a bird watching person. And I really enjoyed feeding the birds. And I really enjoyed helping people enjoy the hobby of feeding the birds. And so that's really just the first store and how I got started here in Indy. Then people came in and said, hey, I like what you're doing. How do I spend my day doing this? So the first franchise, I said, come back in 6 months and I'll sell you a franchise. I'd only been open like a year and a half, but he wanted to do it. So I went out and bought a $3 book on how to franchise your business. And I used that. And then I borrowed some franchise documents from another franchise, marked their name, put mine in. And it only, didn't take a lot of money for my friend, the lawyer, to use those and get me started. And and then wasn't long. When I started the franchise business 2 years after I started our little store, same month I married my wife, Nancy. And so we both are, very, very mission driven, very outdoor, nature oriented. And so together we then started building the company.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the $3 book too. Is that your best investment in?
It is. I'm still looking for that book. I'm looking in the deep file somewhere. That book's going to show up.
You got to tell me the name. I'll see if I can find it sometime. One of the things that makes Wild Birds Unlimited unique is its ability to create joyful experiences for customers, right?
Yes.
So talk about the role that joy plays in your company culture, and how do you make that translate across all your locations?
Well, as you know, every company has a culture, and it's only the one that you want it to be if you make it so, right? Because somebody's going to make a culture in your company, and it may not be the one you want.
Yeah, if there's a vacuum there, it may be.
Yes, if there's a vacuum, there will be a culture, and it's likely not the one you want. So I think it's really open, starts with really good communication of your mission, vision, values, and then you live by those mission, vision, and values. But you have to really reinforce that and talk about it constantly. You can't just put it in a drawer somewhere and hope somebody who read it 4 years ago remembers or cares about it. You've got to bring it up all the time, and then they really have life. One way I do that is I every year I write a strategic white paper. And in this white paper is basically I've spent 6 months and I write like 20 pages. And I spent 6 months researching it. Our franchisees, my staff here at the Franchise Support Center, the retail world, the franchising world, our retail customers, the birds, our vendors. And then I write down, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I see. And so that basically also tells people, here's what we're not going to do. And you may have had a good idea. It just wasn't the one that I picked. And so it's just, it's a very direct thing, because I figure there's 100 ideas on how to do anything. 5 of them might be good, but I got to pick one of the 5. And I'm going to pick the one that meshes with all the other best practices that our company is doing. Yours may be a good one, but it didn't mesh. So that's what I'm going to do, is every year tell you, here's what's going to happen. And so I brought props, if I can show you. So here's like my strategic white paper. It is truly a white paper. And last year's was Magic Moments, the art of cultivating customer loyalty. So first thing is mission, vision, values.
Right up front, yeah.
And you can see our mission is we bring people and nature together, and we do it with excellence. And that's a challenge, that we do it better. But what do you see under our vision? What's the first thing we say? Can you read it?
Zoom in here a little bit.
Read it for us.
We bring joy.
Joy.
Yep, there it is.
Bring joy into our customers' lives. So you start out with that. If you want to have joy be a part of your culture, you got to say it's going to be. And so for us, business success starts with joy and relationships and empathy for what people are going through. we sometimes use the slogan, create a refuge in your own backyard. And that's for the birds, but it's also for our customers in their own backyard, a place of refuge. But it's also when you come into our store, we're a refuge from the world. And so people come into our store, and all of a sudden you can see the muscles relax, the shoulders go down. They kind of might have been in a hurry to pick up some bird food. They know what they wanted, but then they kind of slow down, and the bird songs are playing, and there's videos of birds. And so you create that relaxing environment, and it's also kind of a refuge from the world and a place to be happy.
I like that. I mean, this is the Bliss Business Podcast. So this is like a perfect example of kind of creating a blissful experience for customers when they come in, and doing this, you know, not just your first location, but you've spread it out to 350 different locations across.
So so then we have our annual conference of our stores. We call it our Enterprise Leadership Conference. And the reason I named it that is I started selling a mom and pop franchise concept. So there was usually one unit, and then there was they would do everything, and they would hire more like sales help and some backroom help maybe, but they did everything. Well, then you can't grow that way. You have to learn how to be an enterprise leader, and a lot of people just kind of weren't making that change. They would just work harder, and they really weren't having a joyful franchise ownership experience. So, because they might have been doing okay, but they didn't get any time off or vacation. So we really wanted them to learn basically to how to hire and delegate all the different tasks, so that they have a much more joyful ownership experience, as well as we want our customers to have a joyful hobby experience.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about joy here today, because it's true. I mentioned in the intro, right, that the studies prove. In fact, one that I looked up and prepped for the show was from the Harvard Business Review, stating that they're companies that connect with their customers on an emotional level. From this study, seem to demonstrate a 306-degree higher lifetime value, and far more likely to recommend that particular brand. So, it's not just, as we were saying, kind of this soft skill. But I'm curious, when the owners do start to delegate, right, what have they done, or what have you done, I guess, to be able to maintain that strong culture, down to the employee level?
We have really good online resources for a franchisee to train staff, and there's skills training and there's mindset training. And so skills training is just how do you run the point of sale and things like that. And mindset training is how do you create a relationship, and what are the aspects that creates an enduring relationship. And in a hobby, that's very important. We don't want it to be a transactional visit to our store. We want it to be relational. So we create very deep relations with our customers. I have some that go all the way back, 44 years to the first month I opened up, who are still coming in the store. They were young like me, but they're still coming in. And so that's really for us the thing, because we know the bird feeder is going to run empty,
right?
And they've got to fill it somewhere. So, and there's dozens, places to buy bird food that they're already probably going to. Could be anywhere from a hardware store to a feed store to a grocery store, and so it's a trip they have to make. They have to decide to come to our store, and so we all say, oh, we're a specialty store or whatever, but you know what that means? A specialty store has to be special. And so you've got to make it worth their trip. It's, figure it's at least an hour, drive there, be there, drive home, whatever. And that's a lot of time for people to spend. And so you've really got to be special. And one of the things we talk about is that when a customer has chosen to come to our store, it is a gift to our business. That's a gift that they have chosen us out of all the other choices they had. So what do we owe them in return? We owe them a gift of a special experience when they're in our store. And so there's lots of ways we do that when they do come in the store to make it worth their while. And some of it could be education about the birds. It could be, here's an event that's happening. We're putting on a bird walk, or here's some other community event that's happening with the birds. But it's really important to us to kind of bring them into the community of bird feeding hobbyists, and to just, I guess I call it giving them a gift back.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
This is how you kind
of. I think you are really giving them a gift, because I feel like just the whole business, watching birds as an extension to a way that they can relieve stress and reduce anxiety and depression, right? I mean, it's been found that watching birds actually does those things.
And Mike, there's actually a book called Ornitherapy, and it's all exactly about that concept and all the research that's been done about how birds and nature, even forest bathing and all that, can really bring down the anxiety levels. And everybody who watches the birds, it becomes this relaxing event. It might just be a few minutes. You're walking by a window at your home. Maybe it's while you're doing the dishes. Maybe you're watching TV, but it's out that window, or you're out on your deck. But all those things just really mean so much in people's lives.
Yeah, I kind of want to underline a point here. Is like, because in retail, a lot of businesses, you're competing with Amazon, and you're trying to figure out, how can I differentiate that from them? And really, like you said, you're really selling this deeper experience where you've got your entire purpose is coming out into the community too, like you mentioned, right?
Absolutely. That is a very conscious differentiation between Amazon and other places you can buy bird food. And advice, it's not just the experience, it's really advice that here's how you use these products, here's the ones you should be using. And we call it being seasonally savvy, because birds migrate. And so the birds that are here today, some of them will be here in the summer, but they'll be a different crew. And some have left, some have arrived. So we have to be seasonally and bird savvy. And that's the wonderful thing about having a franchise, instead of like us owning them all here centrally, is that's the job of the franchisee, is to be locally bird savvy. And that is something they take very seriously, so they can express, here's the birds that have just migrated in. Oh, those are already gone. And here's how you attract them, or here's how you put up a house for them. And so that's really, to me, the wonderful thing about being a franchise company is we depend, that is their job, to be locally savvy. And I don't think the customers could ever get that from
there's no, I don't see how. I mean, and there's no way. They know the neighborhoods, they know the community, they know where the bird action is, and
that's right. Yeah, you could say, well, what neighborhood do you live in? You go, oh, we have other customers that have bluebirds that are in your neighborhood too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think this for people that are looking to getting into retail and you're really kind of leery about like competing with the Amazons and whatnot, it's really important that customer experience that kind of Jim's kind of talking about, and that culture that they built. I think that's the one thing that is very hard to compete with at a local level, if you can master that.
The other thing we do, and this is a little combination of what you do and then what we're doing to create relationships, we do a lot of community type things in the bird world. And then from our franchise, we do things like with National Wildlife Federation. We're one of the champions of their Create a Bird Habitat in Your Backyard. So we can lead people to creating better habitats by being associated with the National Wildlife Federation. We are overseeing something that's starting tomorrow. It's the Great Backyard Bird Count with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And there's over 100 countries all across the world that will count birds in 4 days, and we're the sponsor of it.
Oh,
And there'll be over 8,000 species counted in 4 days around the world in over 100 countries. There's 12,000 species of birds. So that's pretty good in 4 days. So now all the scientists can use all that data this one weekend every year. We know where all the birds are all across the world. So it's a really cool event. So we have emails, we have auto emails that go out to all the customers, that franchisee doesn't have to think about. We just, we send them out. So that's all automated. And there's, many other ways we've automated certain emails too. Probably a lot of things you guys have learned to do.
Yeah.
But these are kind of some of the strategies that you use to build like that loyal customer base, right? And get that deep engagement.
It's going outside the four walls of your store, and in the local community, we reward franchisees who do that. We give out awards every year called Friend of the Environment, and that could be 4 or 5 stores a year. And we tell their stories. Here's what they did with the local nature center. It could be a library, could be kids groups, schools, whatever. So really, recognition of good work is a very important thing within a company. But I think another way that you can support this kind of driven purpose, to joy, is to actually measure it. And when we do our...
All right, I want to hear about this, because people have trouble trying to measure these things, and we try and bring it out from them, and it's very rare when we get someone who's like, yes, no, we got to measure this.
So we do very well with our customer service, customer appreciation email survey. We're like at 93% overall, overall satisfaction. And so it's way high above almost any other specialty store that this large company does surveys for. And the way we support that is that each store has their own portal to find out how their store did, and the benchmarks that they can compare themselves to within our company and within other companies. So, then people go, oh, well, why am I not doing as well as this other Wild Birds Unlimited, an hour away? And then there are things we go, well, here's what you can do to increase those scores, because it really, really matters that you have high scores, because one more visit a year by a customer can be huge if you spread that out across all the customers. And then another thing we do is we measure by our franchisees, how did we do as a franchisor? And so there's hundreds of companies that this one survey company does. And we're usually we're in the top 20 this year. We're like number 19. And we have been as high as number 4 or 5. But then the next year we instituted one WBU where we kind of required people to do a lot of things that not everybody wanted to do, which was use the same point of sale, use the same loyalty club, have the same visual presentation. So we dropped down to like 30 something, which wasn't bad. It was still in the top 10%. And now we're back in the teens. Now that everybody goes, oh, I guess those were pretty good. And so we're doing better. But you measure it, and we share all that, every bit of data, every comment we share with our franchisees, our potential franchisees. And so it's a very open thing that we do.
You got to have that feedback loop for a healthy system to work. Yeah. We've got a question from a LinkedIn user. Jim, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when starting Wild Birds Unlimited, what would it be?
I'll say 2. I'd say I concentrated more on the product and, the bird feeding and the products and things like that. Like, I designed this feeder, so I kind of, that was kind of, then I was always very product oriented, hobby oriented. And I did not spend enough time thinking about the people like I do now. So I wasn't thinking enough about the staff that is working the front line, and that, I just didn't think about that as much as I should have. And so that was a really big thing. I think and then the second thing I was going to mention is I should have taken on mentors sooner, because I think I was just a little proud and didn't want to ask. And I was a trained scientist. I have a master's degree in ecological plant physiology. And so I didn't know anything about business. So I was too proud to ask anybody, and I didn't even know who to ask. And then I eventually did find some people to ask, and it made all the difference. And I think one of the things they really got me to think about was, you've really got to think more about people versus just hoping everybody is coming along as you would like them to be involved in your mission, vision, and values. But so I'd say those two things is to really think of people first, because they really are your business, and then seek mentors.
That's great. That's great. I love those 2 points. I also want to give a shout out to Scott Porras. I think he's one of your franchise owners there.
Oh,
Jim.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today.
That's great.
So yeah, and you make so many valid points, Jim. Just naturally, obviously, you're an extremely brilliant business owner. But going back to this point about the customer experience, it's so true that those customers that have that great experience, time and time again, they're number one, they're going to make a recommendation, right, to somebody else. And then they're going to continue to obviously engage with the companies, with the brands that give them that customer experience, right? And I think having that purpose being really strong all the way down to the local level is really key.
Mike, did you have a question?
Oh, no, go ahead.
One of the ways we support that is to have what I call how did I do culture. And how did I do culture or how could I have done better, whichever question you wish to ask. But it can happen in the broad ways, like those surveys that I told you about, the customer surveys and the franchisee surveys, but can also happen after every interaction that goes on in the store. Like when we carry the seat out and put it in the trunks, and then you come back in, and I'm not sure this happens every time, but you can't ask your fellow crew, how could I have done better? How did I do? And so they're going to say, oh, well, you recommended, we overheard and you recommend this and that, but you kind of forgot to mention this, or you could have added that, or, they or it could be even like they mentioned they have grandkids and we got all these cool little hand, puppets over here with animals, raccoons and stuff. Right. They might have wanted a Christmas present for their grandkid, Right. So it could be anything that how could I have done better? And so when that becomes part of your culture, then you just keep improving. And that is how, I actually use the example of, we just had this Super Bowl. So you go, the finest quarterbacks in the world are always asking, how could I do better to themselves? Right. They look at the films, they ask their coaches, they ask their players, their receivers, their runners, they always are asking, how could I do? Otherwise, they're not going to be the best.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Next Sunday is not guaranteed, right?
All right, we've got another question here.
Hi, Matt. So Matt's asking
about have the bird cam on your deck at home.
So Matt was probably watching it. I had the 50th camera on the internet, and it was of my bird feeders. So this is late 1994.
Oh, okay.
So you could only find like cameras showing cats playing and aquariums. And so my IT guy and I, we figured out how to put bird feeder cam on the internet. Actually, that one's not showing, but Matt, we have I have an owl box in our backyard, and the mama's checking it out right now. So we hope she lays an egg in about 2 to 3 weeks, and then that will be streaming, and you can find it on our website, wvu.com, or the Cornell Lab of Ornithology also has a bunch of links to it as well.
Got it. Oh man, I love it. And it sounds, to me, I hope the listeners are taking away the little things that you've done are really making your organization stand out and build that connection that's going to build long-term value. I wanted to turn, I guess, a little bit more now towards like a strong community within the franchise. And so as a franchise, you built a network of all these independent business owners, under one brand. What have you learned about, I guess, fostering a strong community among the franchisees?
We have learned a lot. And so we have coaches that then it's usually kind of like regions. And then they create even kind of like sub-communities within those regions. And a lot of them might share some of the same things. It could be the same vendors who are delivering bird food products to them, so they can talk about that. Could be they're experiencing the same weather, because weather can be favorable for birds being hungry, or it might be not favorable. So, for instance, right now it's kind of just rainy and warm in the Pacific Northwest, and that's not that great of bird feeding weather. If it was a little colder and just a little drier, I know it never gets super dry there, but just a little bit colder, then that would be greater bird hunger, because they need so many calories per day. So you can talk about this, but they also then do talk about, we just call it all the basic things of getting and keeping customers. So a lot of them have figured out a lot of cool things themselves that they share with each other, and they share with us and with a coach, and then that trickles on up, and we go, wow, that's a great idea. And so, yeah, we do have a lot of that. We have regional meetings where they'll either drive or fly into, and so that creates that regional community.
Got it. Yeah, it's good practice.
Matt says he's going to find out.
Matt. All right, Matt.
Love it. I love the engagement.
As we kind of look into the future, what trends do you see shaping the retail industry, and how do you think businesses can evolve while staying true to their core mission? Well,
it's a lot of it. The customers have changed, for one thing. From 5-6 years ago, customers are different, and so their options are different. Even us boomers are becoming more digitally savvy, and so we're not just stuck in the analog age. We're all doing a lot of digital buying as well, and so you really retailers have to realize that. So if you're going to be convenience, perhaps, and price, that's a different strategy, perhaps, than experiential and relational and high quality. And so I think you're going to have to pick which one you're going to be in. If you're in the middle, you're not going to win on anything. You've got to be the best at being experiential. And for us, we always have fair prices. We have good prices. We actually compete with any of the big guys when they have the same quality of merchandise. We compete very well, but since their merchandise is usually not the same quality, people don't really know that. Just sometimes it seems like it's less expensive. But when we have everything we sell in the bird feeding hobby, almost 90% of it is name brand. So you can't buy like our brand on anywhere else but where we sell it, at our franchisees. And so, or online, which goes through our franchisees. When we do an online sale, it's a franchisee that gets the sale. And so they are the ones, it is actually their own store. We have 360 online stores, and each one goes to a franchisee. And so, so that's good. Loyalty is going to be really big, which is, we have a great loyalty program, I think, that works really well. And we reward the customers for their loyalty and give them great discounts and all. And that creates a lot of loyalty. And so I think you combine all those things with the communication to your customers, the personalization, the customization, that we can do, that is then the marks of a specialty store, something that, can, like sometimes I've talked about, I've tried to be a fly fisherman and I'm not very good at it. I always say I must only catch the stupid trout because I'm never doing the right stuff. And I don't catch very many. But imagine, trout store, they'll tell you what string to be on, what hour of the day, what fly to use, and how to cast it. That's different than just buying at a big box your fly fishing stuff. Maybe those things will work, but you really don't know what you're doing. So that's for us. You can buy bird food and feeders, but we can help you keep the squirrels off of it. We can help you attract bluebirds. We can help you, attract pileated woodpeckers. We can really help you have the hobby that you really wish to have, instead of just being on your own when you go to, a big box or another vendor of these products.
Yeah, you get to have conversations with people, right?
Conversations,
right.
Absolutely.
I also feel like, Jim, you guys are hitting on the trend of local. I know Deloitte put out a retail trends report not too long ago in 2024, and really emphasizing that return to local and the experience-based shopping. So I think your organization is doing a really wonderful job in that. I think we have another question from our audience here. It's related to, I believe,
I know, Brian.
Employee stock options. So
right.
how has the newly formed employee stock options impacted Wild Birds Unlimited employees?
Right. So an ESOP is when you sell your company to your employees. And so we did that last year. I sold 30% of my company to my employees. And so it is now, you call it an employee-owned company. And I just say sometime in the next 10 years, I'll sell the rest. But that allowed me to figure out my exit plan. I'm starting my 45th year of this, and everybody knows I can't do it forever. And so I looked at other options, private equity and all that. And I said, nope. This culture, this company needs to be run by my employees who know so well what to do. And I have an incredible, deep staff of employees and franchisees. I have franchisees. Some of them started in 1987. They were kids like me, and they're still running their store. I have an employee who started in 1989. Several 1990, 1994. And so I have this deep reserve of knowledge and culture and institutional knowledge. And for us, the best thing to do was to sell to our employees instead of to a private equity firm. So the employees, it's still fairly new for them. It's just been about 7 months. And so they haven't totally gotten their mind wrapped around it. But already, I can hear somebody say, well, okay, if we do that, how's that affect the stock price? And so, maybe there's a different way of doing it, or a lower cost, or, because now they know that every dollar spent is going to affect their stock price of the shares that will be allocated to them at some day.
Well, that's got to be a big benefit, I think, too, then, for your whole organization, right? It's probably a differentiator too. I myself haven't heard of many franchises even doing something like that. Yeah.
Well, and part of that is just another concept I haven't brought up here is it's part of this thing we call joint benefit, joint value to different stakeholders within our company. So this certainly has to do with the joint benefit to our employees, not just a paycheck and maybe some bonuses here and there. It's more than that. They are the company, which is really important. But I use the concept of joint benefit with our franchisees in many decisions, and also bring in our vendors, because like an example would be a franchisor can make a decision to maybe, like you're in marketing, so they market a sandwich, 4 for $5, Well, and the franchisee can't make any money, if that's the case, probably. But maybe they didn't talk about it before the franchisor said that's what we're going to do. Well, we're going to talk about it, make sure it's joint benefit to them, and also the vendors. We're not a transactional customer with our vendors either. We're a long-term relational customer as well, and that reaps us great benefits in the way our vendors deal with us. We're first in line. If anything gets scarce, they're sending their merchandise to us because we're taking care of them. They're taking care of us, and so this whole thing of joint benefit, to me, the ESOP was just a part of that. That is part of our culture and how we want to spend our days.
Got it.
Yeah, it's really kind of that conscious capitalist approach that you're talking about, where it's the different stakeholders, especially with the vendors. When how did you guys fare during the pandemic? Were there issues with supply chains, or were you guys busy? Because I know a lot of people got into their gardens and got into the outdoors during that stretch.
Actually, the pandemic, all these people staying home, a lot of them started feeding the birds. So we were very fortunate in that we benefited from all that. And we were, it really then became a supply chain problem, as you can then imagine. And we had some, like I say, these great vendors who stepped up. And if they had to make a choice of who's getting supplies, they'd send it to us. And but they work, and then I have a staff that work daily with them to figure out their priorities, what products we really need the most, and so forth and so on. So, but it really paid off to have those long-term relationships. And one of the things you're mentioning in the pre questions you'd sent was storytelling. And one of the stories I've told is nature based, and it's if you want to have spring, you have to have all of spring, all the plants, all the birds, and the success of spring depends on all the good things that were done the previous summer. Because and right now my wife Nancy and I, we tap maple trees to get sap, but the sap quality depends on last year's sunshine. So the sunshine you received and created last year is going to totally determine the sunshine you can give comes this spring. And so the quality of the buds, how many flowers they're going to have, how much growth they can have, how much the renaissance of spring after winter is going to be, totally depends on the groundwork that you have already laid. It doesn't just happen this month. It all depends on the last year or years of groundwork and efforts that you've made. So that's if that's that falls into storytelling, that's where we are.
Before we wrap up, Jim, one question I like to pose to all of our guests is, what role do you think love plays in business?
I think a lot. And so one of the things that we are very pleased to say is we do hear the word love a lot. We, in our customer surveys, we hear a lot of customers saying, I love the store, I love your staff, I love the people, I love the products, and I love the birds. We hear the word love a lot. And we use it with each other when we see each other at the annual conferences and regional meetings. We're very huggy, and so I think we may not always just say love you, but it's there, and
it's there, yeah,
it's there, and it's a very it's a very tight relationship we have with people, and I think it has a big place.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. Action does speak louder than words, right? So it's better to show
Absolutely.
it than to say it. So, Jim, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today and your insights on Wild Birds Unlimited, and just really seeing how you created a business that's centered around joy and nature, and has built that really meaningful connection with your customers. I can just tell you're a tremendous leader to be able to work with and work alongside. So I'm sure your leadership is inspiring the example of hopefully many purpose-driven businesses out there and showing them how they can actually thrive.
Well, thank you, Mike and Stephen, and congratulations on the Bliss podcast. I think the basis of it is fabulous, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, I love it a lot. I mean, it's definitely just to have these conversations. I think people need to hear these conversations, really.
And what does Bliss stand for again?
Build love into scalable systems.
All right,
and
very good.
For us, it's like a way to not just have something be a random act of kindness, but really an ongoing system of kindness.
Yeah.
And really that prompts us as humans to behave in a way we know we all can, I think.
It's totally doable.
Yep, it's doable. All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you to our listeners for joining another episode. Be sure to subscribe for more conversations with leaders shaping the future of business. And we will see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.